welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Research matters at the University of Vermont. In the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, that research is literally grounded in Vermont and the men and women who are the stewards of the land. Research also takes time, and it takes many hands. In the rising tide that is research, to lift all boats, as the saying goes, are the efforts of students. They may not get the glory, but they're definitely doing the work. To talk about research on Vermont farms, I'm joined by Joshua Faulkner, the Interim Director of the UVM Center for Sustainable Agriculture and UVM's Farming and Climate Change Program Coordinator. And next to Joshua is Liliana Bitolo. She is a graduate student at UVM working on a project about the environmental impact of the increased adoption of producing plant-based proteins in the Northeast. Welcome to both of you.
Good to be here.
We're happy to have you. And Joshua, we've had you on the show many times for a couple different projects. Why don't you tell us the research you're doing most recently?
Yeah, it's really good to be here. So broadly, our research is focused on soil and water resources in agriculture and how climate change is affecting those resources. But I think what that really means is that we're trying to make farmers more resilient with their practices to the effects of climate change, but at the same time, always focused on protecting water quality and here in this area reducing runoff to Lake Champlain. So whether it's drainage practices because of too much water or irrigation practices because of too little water, those are some of the research projects that we have going right now, and we're also doing a lot of literally monitoring runoff at the edge of farm fields to measure the amount of water and how much phosphorus, for example, is in that water.
And Liliana, you've been involved with this for a little while. We actually first met you this past summer when you were working on a field in Addison County taking soil cores for Joshua's research, actually, and that was before you were even taking classes at UVM. So what made you want to get involved even before you were in class?
Yeah, when making the decision to come back to school, I was really driven by the idea of working on more local solutions. And so when I had applied to the program, I was in conversations with Joshua. I had asked, is there any field work? I would really love to be a part of that. And since the growing season in Vermont is in the summer, I kind of saw this as an opportunity to not only get settled within the state, since I'm just moving here, but also get on the ground and gain some of these skills, which were very new to me.
Yeah, get your hands literally dirty before you're in the classroom.
Yes.
That's great. And you actually, you were saying you just moved here. You grew up in Virginia and you've lived on the West Coast in Boston. So how does Vermont compare?
Yeah. Well, I have completely fallen in love with the Northeast. You can say that there's a little bit of different climate issues here. It's my biggest example was living out in California. I mean, I was in Southern California, it was desert and there was no rain, and now have kind of the opposite problem. And so it's definitely been impactful to see how climate change impacts this area so much. But I have really loved already immediately the community in Vermont, and there's a lot of grit here, and people are definitely supporting each other in ways that I haven't seen as readily in other places I've lived.
And that's great. And you mentioned liking kind of the Northeast in general, but there are a lot of different places to pursue a graduate degree there. Why did you go to UVM?
Yeah. UVM, so when I sort of decided that I wanted to go back to grad school, like I said, I wanted to get some of this foundational knowledge in agriculture, and so studying plant and soil science. UVM was one of the schools within the Northeast, and I was like, I'm gonna stay in the Northeast. This is where I'm calling home. But then as I was looking at programs, things like the Institute for Agroecology or the Food System Research Center popped up, and really saw that the school was focusing on investing in a holistic view of supporting agriculture. And then I don't know if many people know the grad student, or if you want to get funding for your program, there's a lot of networking involved, and you have to call professors at different schools. And I started calling the PhD students, and when I talked to some at UVM, several said, you should work with Joshua Faulkner. I feel like he's in line with your work. And not only that he's great to work for. And so, yeah, I just got lucky that found a school within the area I wanted to live, and found someone who was really willing to take me on.
Great. Well, I'm glad it's working out, and you're actually in classes now. How's it been going?
Classes have been good. I'm definitely, it's an adjustment, a bit of a whiplash going from working for 7 years to all of a sudden having homework assignments again. But I'm really appreciating the time and space to understand things and do the research. I felt like in my last jobs, it was, you have 1 hour to figure this out and then talk to someone about it. But now I have a little bit more time to really make sure I have a good understanding.
That's great. And Joshua, let's talk a little bit more about your research. We saw in some video earlier in the program, students getting really hands-on, and it's definitely some hard work sometimes. Can you talk about why you think that's such an important aspect of your research?
Yeah, great question. You know, and I think that's one of the best parts of being an extension is that we get to do the applied research out on farms. And it does, you know, it means some really long days. We come home exhausted and tired. Yesterday was one of those days.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
But we usually have a lot of fun doing it. We have a great team to be out there, and it's just so critical that we're out there on Vermont working farms in Vermont environmental conditions, collecting the primary data. Just like other scientists, we rely upon computer models and laboratory data, but to have that primary data is just so important for building confidence in our results and helping us understand that it's truly reflective of Vermont conditions, and it's not data that we're pulling from, say, the Midwest to make recommendations here in Vermont.
And that research couldn't be done even on a plot at UVM?
It could be, and I think that's what's really great about working on private farms is everyone knows it's not that perfect controlled condition that you know, the research plots that happen on research farms. These are fields that are managed by farmers that are making the decisions that farmers would make in real life to maximize their production, protect the environment in the way they see best. So it is truly reflective of what's happening on Vermont farms.
Sure, and how has your research helped benefit the farms that you're working with hands-on?
Oh, I think it's really helped them make informed decisions about what management practices they adopt or don't adopt. The other way I think it's really critical that we're collecting these data on working farms is that policymakers, state and federal agencies in Vermont are looking to our results, and they have confidence in our results because they come from Vermont farms, so that they can use those and rest assured that they're making the best decisions for how they inform their programs and how they make policy in Vermont.
And as a researcher, do you rely on UVM students to help kind of do the heavy
Absolutely.
lifting?
Absolutely, yeah, and it really is a two-way street. I think graduate students get a fantastic education. They get exposed to working farms, how agriculture actually happens. They broaden their skill set, really deepen their knowledge. And then us as researchers, we get to work with really smart, curious, energetic individuals such as Liliana to really move the ball forward and accomplish our research goals.
And he already touched on it a little bit, but for you as a student, what do you think are the benefits of being on a working Vermont farm when doing this research?
Yeah. I think for me personally, my goals are really around getting money to farmers to be able to take the actions they need to conserve their land and continue to grow and have a financially viable business, and to do that without that on the ground perspective just takes you a step away from advising them or supporting them or collaborating with farmers. So yeah, I think it provides incredible context, and I've been using this term embodied knowledge, but like understanding what it means to walk through heavy clay soils after a rain, and to know what that experience is like. And so when they have one of those days and are coming to meet with you, and you can kind of know a bit about where they've been that day and what they're struggling with.
And do you think your research over the summer has kind of given you a leg up now that you're in class? Do you think that's been beneficial?
It's definitely helped in my soil morphology class,
Sure.
Which we are going into pits and looking at soil horizons, and I would say it has helped the most there.
But definitely already been helpful. That's great.
Yeah.
And how do you think, we were saying a little bit before the taping started that maybe you're not totally sure what you're doing after the program, but has this helped kind of inform your perspective on what you'd like to do going forward in your grad program?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think that my research is going to be a little bit different than what I have done this summer. It's focused more on a specific crop in the Northeast, or a group of them, plant-based proteins, so different legumes, soybeans, black beans. And so as a part of that, we're looking at the environmental impact of that crop, and so soil health is an aspect in that, as well as water quality and air quality. And so I would say this hands-on taking soil tests, and that is definitely going to provide a leg up, I guess you could say, in how I value certain data points or highlight them within my project.
Sure. And we've talked about how this is kind of a formative experience being a grad student and doing this research. Joshua, what do you remember from your days working as a grad student?
Oh, I remember a lot of, again, long days, challenges, but, I think those challenges make it all worth it, because you learn to deal with them, you overcome them, you learn a lot in the process of dealing with those challenges. But I think a lot of days, like we've seen in the tape today, out in the field, working in the soil, getting hands dirty, but always learning. And I think, there's something about using your hands. I think you get some clarity of thought when you're out there in the field and in the fresh air, and you're using your hands and you're understanding the environment.
All right. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that puts a wrap on another Across the Fence. I want to thank everyone at WCAX who makes Across the Fence possible. I'm Jolie Whitney. Have a good one.